Hey everybody! I'm here today to talk to you about minor versus serious faults on the driving test. In this video, I'll be going over the basics of minor faults and serious faults when you're taking your driving test. Now, every place is going to have different definitions, different specific definitions of what each of these are. However, I'm going to go over the basic understanding of them that will hopefully be able to be applied to anywhere that you're taking your driving test. Let's get right into it. A minor fault is a fault that is not potentially dangerous. So it's a fault. It's something bad that you do as a driver, but it doesn't have the potential to be significantly dangerous. I mean, anything can be dangerous, but we're talking about realistically having the potential to be dangerous. Okay, so minor fault, not potentially dangerous. A serious fault could potentially be dangerous. So a serious fault doesn't mean that it is dangerous when you do it, but it could potentially be dangerous. There's also a third classification, which is a dangerous fault. A dangerous fault is something that happens that is dangerous, but that's pretty self-explanatory. If you do something that's super dangerous, then it's a dangerous fault, and that's like an automatic failure. Now, let's go over some specifications, and then I'll give you some examples. So, one minor fault in itself won't cause you to fail the test. But if you do multiple minor faults or the same minor fault repeatedly, it can cause you to fail the test. Now, every place is going to have different definitions of how many minor faults you can do, you can commit. With one place, for example, you can do up to 15 minor faults of different kinds. However, if you do the same minor fault 3 or 4 times, then that'll cause you to fail. 15 different minor faults will cause you to fail, or 3 or 4. And like I said, this is just one location. It all depends on where you're taking your driving test. Now, a serious fault, on the other hand, will definitely cause you to fail. If you commit a serious fault, which could potentially be dangerous, which is a fault that could potentially be dangerous, you are going to fail guaranteed. And that's because even though the serious fault isn't dangerous, what happens if it was dangerous? Now, let me give you some examples. So, minor fault examples, okay? One example of a minor fault is not doing the proper checks before moving away from being pulled over. So, if you are pulled over on the side of the road and then you move away from the curb and you don't do the proper checks, it is a minor fault, except when it causes an almost dangerous situation. If not doing those proper checks causes you to cut off a car, almost hit a pedestrian, or so forth, then that becomes a serious fault. But just not doing the proper checks in itself is usually a minor fault. And like I said, this is just talking about the vast majority. I can't address every specific location of a driving test, but I'm talking about the majority of places. Another example of a minor fault is parking at an angle. If you park your car at an angle and it's not, pretty much straight, then it's going to be a minor fault because it's not dangerous, but it does, create a bad parking situation for the drivers that want to park beside you, for the pedestrians getting in and out of your car or the cars beside you, and so forth. So that is another minor fault, unless it causes, a dangerous situation, but I can't foresee any situation in which parking at an angle would cause a massively dangerous situation. So that's a minor fault. And now let's go over a few examples of serious faults. One example of a serious fault is going through a red light. And believe it or not, this happens all the time on driving tests. I know you're thinking, who's going to run a red light? Trust me, it happens all the time. I speak to people all the time that tell me that they failed because of a major fault, a serious fault of running a red light. It just happens, right? You're nervous, you're not thinking, and you run a red light. So that is obviously a serious fault because it can definitely be dangerous. Another serious fault is mounting the curb. Now, I'm not talking about brushing up against the curb, tapping the curb. Those are all going to likely be minor faults. When you mount the curb, it becomes a serious fault, and I'll tell you why. All that the driving test examiner has to say is, what if there was a pedestrian on that on that curbway, on the sidewalk, on the side of the road, well, then all of a sudden it's dangerous. You might injure someone, you might really hurt someone, you know, it could be a massively dangerous accident. So what it comes down to is this: mounting the curb is something like a serious fault, brushing the curb or touching the curb is something like a minor fault. And that's it. In this video, I've gone over minor versus serious faults on the driving test. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below as a comment. And of course, be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.